Hello, this is Science with Sully, and today I wanted to go over two simple reactions that some beginning biology students might be having trouble with, and they are hydrolysis and dehydration. Both of these reactions are necessary to life, and you can think of them as um, opposites. So if you're having trouble learning one, knowing the other one, well, the other one's just the opposite. So let's break down these two words. Hydro. Let's see what they mean. Hydro, easy. That means water. No problem there. Now let's think about what lysis means. Lysis means to break apart. So when we put that together, hydrolysis is using water to break something apart. And we'll see it do exactly that. Now, let's think about dehydration. Well, D is remove or without, and hydration, again, is another way of saying water. Well, let's put those together. We're removing water. Well, if adding water broke things apart, what do you think removing water will do? It's going to bring things together. And we'll see exactly that. So, now that we have our definitions in front of us, let's see a couple of reactions that we would see, and we're going to start with something very simple. It's going to be more of just imagining the reaction and getting the idea of the reactions down before we actually start looking at how this reaction would be in nature. So let's start with hydrolysis. So what we said is we're adding water to break something apart. Well, let's see that happen. Let's imagine for a second that we have two circles, right? And they're different things. They're not the same circle. So we're going to make them different colors. But these circles are held together by a bond. And that would normally be thought of as a covalent bond or a hydrogen bond, but we'll go over bonds in a different video. So when we add water, as we said, hydrolysis is adding water to break something apart. So if we were to add water, what do you think would happen? Well, the thing that's happening is hydrolysis. So our once macromolecule, our orange and purple circle, are now separated. And this type of reaction usually releases energy. And we'll see how that does right now. So now, on our next example, we're going to move away from the circles and talk about and show an example of how hydrolysis happens in us and in nature. So we have what's called ATP. And those of you that don't know about ATP, one quick fact about it is that it's our energy currency. It's our molecule of energy in humans and animals. So we have ATP, and this is a macromolecule. So what are we going to do? Well, let's add water and see what happens. When you add water, we know that hydrolysis is happening, and it is going to break apart the ATP. And in this case, it breaks it into ADP plus an inorganic phosphate. So it went from adenosine triphosphate to adenosine diphosphate. And like in our example with our circles, this reaction releases energy. And that energy can be used for all types of things like cellular function or transport, cellular transport, protein activation or synthesis, anything. So that energy is definitely used by the cell. So that's hydrolysis. It's really not as hard as you think. If you just break it down, and water is being added to break something apart, and you see that with our addition sign, we are adding water to the equation. Water is being added, which means hydrolysis is happening. Hydrolysis happens and breaks our adenosine triphosphate to adenosine diphosphate. And to balance our checkbook, that phosphate is still there. It's just no longer bonded to the ADP. So hydrolysis, easy enough. We see that. Adding water to break something apart. And what is it breaking apart? It's breaking apart a molecule. It's not always ATP. Basically, every molecule goes through a hydrolysis reaction. So, excuse me, let's go to our dehydration. Reaction. So dehydration, we're removing water, and let's break it down. We know hydrolysis, you add water, it breaks things apart. Well, if you remove water, it's going to do the opposite. It's going to bring things together. So let's go back to our trusty circles. We've got our orange circle, and we've got our purple circle. Now, if you thought pretty critically earlier and said, well, how did those come together in the first place? Well, you're about to find out. So these two molecules, they already have water, and water is keeping them apart from forming a bond to bring them together. So we have those two circles. So if we remove water, so water is going to go away. We remove water, so let's remember, if we're removing water, what kind of reaction is it? Dehydration. And what's going to happen to our orange and purple circles? They are going to come together and form a bond. And water is going to leave. And usually, in the last reaction we saw, usually hydrolysis reactions release energy, and usually these reactions require energy input. And where does that come from? Well, let's see. We'll discuss in a second, but using the shapes, it's really easy to break it down like, oh, well, okay, we're removing water and it brings them together. So let's use our ATP energy reaction and show it how it would be in nature. When you break it down like this, it really is not that hard. So in nature, how does ATP get there in the first place? Well, it starts as ADP plus an inorganic phosphate. What's keeping these two things apart? Well, that's easy. It's the thing that needs to be taken out. Water. So let's subtract water. So we took out water, so I like to remind myself what's happening, dehydration. So what's leaving? Water. And what's usually going in? In this reaction, there actually is an input of energy. So energy is going in. And you get that from concentration gradient in the mitochondria, which will be covered in a different video. But energy is going in this reaction. Well, what happens? These are what we want to bring together. So ADP plus the phosphate becomes ATP. And then this ATP can go through hydrolysis, and then that hydrolysis will turn it into back into an an ADP plus a phosphate, right? And then it comes right back in. Pretty cool how it all links up. So there's our hydrolysis, and this is our dehydration. So if we want to zoom way out and see the big picture of dehydration and hydrolysis reactions, because you need both of them, and they're both happening in tandem with each other. So big picture. I always like to end my videos with a big picture. So let's look at our big picture. Our big picture can be solved with this simple thing. So we'll keep our ATP as the best example to always think of in these reactions. So you have ATP, and it goes to ADP plus a phosphate. What happens here? Actually, let's do it like this so you can see it better. In this, it's hydrolysis is breaking those apart. Well, and what's coming out of that? Energy. We'll say energy is released. Well, that can't stay like that. We need it to be back to ATP to release more energy. What happens here? Well, this actually goes all the way back to that. And that was bothering me, sorry. Well, what's bringing it back to that? Dehydration. And in this certain dehydration reaction, energy is input. We had to find some energy somewhere and input that energy in. And where did that energy come from? Where did what did I say that energy came from? Well, we know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and that energy came from a concentration gradient, which is something I'll discuss in a later video. So this is really our big grand scheme of things. That's what, if you know this and can draw this, then you kind of know what you need to know. You have your ATP. It's your macromolecule, and its hydrolysis is breaking it apart. Hydrolysis, using water to break it apart. And then ADP and your inorganic phosphate, well, they need to be back to ATP again so we can have more energy released. Well, we have our dehydration reaction. We're taking the water that we added in hydrolysis and taking it back out. Well, sometimes we have to put energy in to do that, but it gives us ATP to, again, burn more energy. So I hope this was beneficial to you. And if you want to get more videos and certain things, just subscribe and follow below, and I will always be sharing more content and helpful hints on things and looking at certain scientific things.